We're on the bottom of the Chafalafon with Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. We're in the middle of Agadata and the Gemara. And the Gemara here is explaining Psukim and Shir Hashirim. So the Gemara continues, Kevtzaisov Taltalim. The hairs, the locks are wavy. So this is a mashal, of course. And what do we learn out from this? Amar Rav Chiste, Amar Mar Ukve, Melamed sheyesh lidreish, akol kaitz v'kaitz, tile tilim shalalachas. On every single kaitz of the letters of the Torah have crowns on top of them. And from every single one of these crowns, you could expound tile tilim shalalachas, mountains and mountains of halachas. Then it says in Shir Hashirim over there, continued the same pasuk, Shchayres ka'erev, black like a raven. What is this a mashal for? So this Gemara brings a few pshatim. B'mi ata maitzan. Who do you find the Torah by? Who can darshan the Torah like this? B'mi shemashkim umarev alein lebeis hamedrash. Someone that wakes up early to go to shul, and someone that is in shul at night also learning Torah. Rabbi says another pshat. B'mi shemashchir panav aleim ka'erev. Someone that his face becomes black like a raven to learn Torah. In other words, he toils, he works learning Torah with such an intensity that his face becomes black. Rava says, a person that becomes like an achzar. What's the translation of the word achzar in English?
Raven.
No, cruel.
Cruel.
Person that becomes like cruel for his children and his family, like a raven, which a raven has a nature of cruelty. So the Gemara explains, what does this mean? That he becomes cruel to his family. Kiha, that Rav Ada bar Masne have a ka'azal beirav. Rav Ada bar Masne was going to yeshiva to learn Torah. After he was married, he went back to yeshiva. Amra lei de bisel. His wife told him, Yunuki didach ma yavid lahu. Your children, what's going to be with your children? Who's going to feed them? Amar la. So he told her, Mi shlima kormi ba'agma. All the vegetables that grow out over there in the swamp or out in the field are all done, they're all gone. You can't find anything to feed them. You'll take care of them yourself, and I'm going to go and learn Torah in yeshiva. Okay, that's the Gemara over here. Yeah. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Mishalem, the Gemara now brings up different indyanim, benegeh to the schar and einish, the schar that Eibishter gives. Mishalem l'sayna vel panav la'avidai. A person, the Eibishter pays to his enemies, ones that are enemies in his face, la'avidai, the ones that want to destroy him. What does this mean? Amr Rabbi Shua ben Levi, mikra kasav yef. If not for the fact that the pasuk says this, we wouldn't be able to say this on our own. Kaviyachol, so to speak, ka'odem shenoisem masi al panav. It's like a person that's carrying a package in his face, and he wants to throw it down. So over here, the Eibishter has certain reward that he has to pay to Shoim. For the few mitzvahs that they did, and the Eibishter has to give them reward, it's kaviyachol, the Eibishter feels it's like a heavy load, and he has to pay this to the Rishonim. That's the pshat of it. Mishalom l'sainav, the Eibishter is paying the reward to his enemies, and yes, it's a heavy load. Lo ya'acher l'sainai, the Eibishter does not delay paying the reward. To his enemies, the Eibishter doesn't delay paying the reward. Amar Rabbi lo l'sainav v'lo ya'acher. To his enemies, the Eibishter doesn't delay paying them. Al ya'acher l'tzadikim. For the tzaddikim, the Eibishter will delay paying them. Why? For the tzaddikim, the Eibishter delays. The Eibishter commands you to do the mitzvahs today. So what's the meaning of hayom la'saisam? Hayom la'saisam. Today, the tzaddikim fulfill mitzvahs. V'loy l'machal la'saisam. Tomorrow, lasad lavi, when Mashiach comes, then you won't have the ability to fulfill mitzvahs. Hayom la'saisam and l'machar l'kabel scharam. Today you do the mitzvahs, and tomorrow, after Mashiach comes, then you get the schar. So what do we see from here? That the Rishayim, the Eibishter gives them their schar immediately, because then they come l'mayla, and the Eibishter gives them their punishment. Mashenk and tzaddikim, it's the opposite. In this world, they have certain struggles to pay off the things that they have to get an einish for, and then they come l'mayla, they come l'asad lavai, and then the Eibishter gives them their full schar. What's the meaning of the pasuk when it says erech hapayim? So the simple pshat of the pasuk is that the Eibishter he's slow to get angry. So erech af mi boyele should have said a singular term. Af is anger, that he's slow to get angry. Why does it use apayim, which is a double lashon, a plural lashon? Elo, so the Gemara says the pshat is erech hapayim, that the Eibishter has two different faces. That's what Rashi explains here. Look into Rashi. There's a panim seichakais and a panim zeumais. A happy face, a smiling face, and a sour, and a face with a frown. So erech hapayim l'tzadikim and erech hapayim l'rishayim. That there's the face of the Eibishter for the tzadikim and for the rishayim. What does this mean? So the Rashi explains that the Eibishter, for the tzadikim, the Eibishter is erech hapayim, the Eibishter is slow. What does that mean? With the schar that the Eibishter gives to tzadikim, the Eibishter is slow, because he waits until Asad Lavi to give them their full schar. And with the rishayim, the Eibishter is also slow with their punishment, because in this world, the Eibishter gives them a good life for what they deserve, for the few mitzvahs that they're doing, and then Lamaila, the Eibishter gives them their punishment. Okay, that's the end of the Agadah. We go back to the Mishnah. So the last thing in the Mishnah, when it spoke about the halacha of putting up the partitions at the corners, the pasen that you put up to be able to make it into a Reshus HaYachid for the well water, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, how large of a space could you make this? So Rabbi Yehuda said the largest you can go is Beis Sasayim, 100 by 50 amas. And the Chachamim said, no, you can go as large as you want, doesn't make a difference. So what's the point of Rabbi Yehuda's shitta? Rabbi Yehuda's shitta is that you have not only b'negeh to this case, but b'chlal, b'negeh to a Reshus HaYachid, there's a maximum size of a Reshus HaYachid of a Beis Hasayim. If it's a space where a person is not living there, if you have a space where a person lives there in his house or in his courtyard, it can be as large as you want. But if you have an area that's enclosed with a fence, but nobody lives there, so then the largest size it could be is Beis Sasayim, 100 by 50 amas. So Rabbi Yehuda says the same thing is over here, because we don't want a person to learn out from here a kula to anywhere else that it could be larger. So now the Gemara's question is, how do we measure this Beis Hasayim? The Beis Hasayim that we spoke about, what are we measuring here? Are we measuring the well, the hole of the water, and also we're measuring the whole entire space that's surrounding the well, until the partitions that you have. All of this space is the Beis Hasayim that Rabbi Yehuda was speaking about. Or maybe it's talking about the actual hole for the water itself. The hole for the water itself is not a pistama hole, but it's just basically like this lake, this little lake over here, that is as large as Beis Hasayim. And that's what he was talking about when he was saying that the space is only allowed to be up to the size of Beis Hasayim. But he's not talking about the area outside the boyer of itself, which is enclosed. And the Gemara explains now the machlokes. I'm sorry, not the machlokes. The Gemara explains the ibaya. Adam noisin einov bebayrai. Do we say that a person is looking and the person is focusing just on the water itself, and therefore and therefore if the boyer itself is Beis Hasayim and not larger than that, a person won't learn from here a kula to any other place to carry more than a Beis Hasayim, because the person is going to learn from what? From the size of the water itself. And as long as the water itself is Beis Hasayim, so he's going to learn to everywhere else that you could only carry Beis Hasayim and not more. Or we say no, Adam Neisan Einov b'mechitzasei. A person is going to pay attention not only to the size of the water itself, he's going to pay attention to the water and the whole enclosure. So therefore, that's also part of the shear of Beis Hasayim, that a person will learn from here how much he's allowed to carry somewhere else. And therefore, v'gazrinon, we're geyser, dilma asi lechlufi yesem Beis Hasayim bekarfif. If you allow the enclosure to be more than Beis Hasayim, not only the water, but the whole enclosure to be more, a person might come to carry in other places that are more than a Beis Hasayim. Toshama, so the Gemara brings a raya from a Braisa, which we learned already before. And the Braisa discusses the same thing that it brings up in the Mishnah, which is the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, how large the spaces could be. And here it brings the discussion they had. Kama hein mekuravin. How close could you make the partitions to the boyer? Kedei reisha v'ruba shel para. Most of the animal of the cow has to be able to enter. Kama hein muruchakin. How far could it be? Afilu kur v'afilu kurayim. Even if you have a space of a kur which is 30 saw, or kurayim which is 60 saw, massive space, you're allowed to open up such a big space and make these partitions. Rabbi Yehuda says, Beis Hasayim mutter, only up to the amount of a Beis Hasayim, Yosemi Beis Hasayim, more than that space, Aser. So Amr Leila Rabbi Yehuda, Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda, why are you limiting the space? Iyatamayde Bedir, Besar, Muktzah, B'chotzer, either a barn or an area for animals, or a lot for where you store things, or a chotzer, a front yard. Afila beis chameshes kurim or beis aseres kurayim shemuter. That even if you have a massive space of 5 kor, 10 kor, a huge space, as long as you have a gate around it, it's allowed. So why over here are you putting a limitation on this? Amalehem, Rabbi Yehuda answers, Zu mechitze ve'elu pasen. Over there, you're talking about a proper fence, a proper mechitze. What are we talking about over here? You're putting up pasen, you're putting up the boards in the corners. So over here, it's a much bigger kula, so it can't be that large. That's the machlokes of Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Then the Braisa says another opinion that was not mentioned in the Mishnah. Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, Boir beis hasayim a beis hasayim mutter. This maximum size of a beis hasayim is regarding the boir itself. The actual water itself could be up to beis hasayim. We're not including the space around. We're only talking about the water itself that could be a beis hasayim. That's what's allowed. And then he says, the space around has to be enough for the para to be able to enter. So over here we have very clearly, Rab Shimon ben Elazar is saying that this maximum size of beis hasayim, what is it talking about? It's talking about the actual size of the boir itself, not of the space around. So now says the Gemara, Rab Shimon ben Elazar boir v'loy pasin. If Rab Shimon ben Elazar says that, how do we measure the space of how large it could be? We're measuring just the boir itself and not the space around it. Miklal, that Rabbi Yehuda boir upasin kamar. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda that says that the space could be beis hasayim, he's not talking only about the water itself, he's talking about the boir and the space around it. Otherwise, there's no machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Shimon ben Elazar. They're saying the same thing. So the Gemara says, no, v'loi, this is not true, not necessarily. Rabbi Yehuda boir v'loi pasin kamar. When Rabbi Yehuda said the shir of the size of beis hasayim, he also could have been speaking about the boir without the space around it. Now, if so, Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Isn't he saying the same thing as Rab Shimon ben Elazar? So the Gemara answers, no, not necessarily. The difference is, ikebenayu arich v'kotten. The difference is if you have a space which is rectangular, it's long and it's narrow. A beis hasayim could be 100 by 50 amas, or you have a beis hasayim that it's made in a way that it's square. If you looked in the lashon of Rab Shimon ben Elazar and the Braisa, Rab Shimon ben Elazar added boir beis hasayim a beis hasayim. He says it has to be square. Mashenkin Rabbi Yehuda says that the space of this boir does not have to be square. Even if it's long and narrow, you can still make this enclosure to be able to carry over here. The point is that this area that Chachamim or Geyser is all a special kula that Chachamim allowed. So therefore there's all kinds of limitations to what extent, how large of a size they allow this. Dr. Gemara weiter, Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Rab Shimon ben Elazar said a klal. This is regarding the chlal, where you have an outdoor space. So there's a limitation of how large that space could be and still be like a regular Rishus HaYachid. And he said as follows, Kol avir, any outdoor space, shetashmishay l'dira, that you're using it to live there. Doesn't mean living there like a house. We're talking about an outdoor space. Kagan dir, sar, muktzah, chotzer, the things that we mentioned before. A person is constantly entering into that area for his animals or for other things. He has storage there. So a person is very often walking in and out of it there to use it as part of his living space. Even if you have a large space like 5 kurim, 10 kurim, it's still mutter. It's allowed, it's considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. But if you have an outdoor space, you don't use it constantly. That's not a place that you're always going in there. But it's a place that you made for yourself when you have to be out in the air. You made yourself a hut there. You made yourself a space to be able to go there. You have a person that occasionally he has to go out to guard his field, and he built himself a hut to be able to be in the field, to be able to guard his field. So over here, beis hasayim mutter, yosim beis hasayim asa. Even though he built himself a hut there, that's not considered to be like a house. That's not considered to be a place that you live in. You will go there very occasionally, and therefore the maximum space is a beis hasayim, and more than that, you're not allowed to carry there. Zok the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says regarding these pasim that you have by a boir. If you have the rabbim that pass through this area, so then you have to move it to the side. In other words, you have this boir that was right in the middle of the Rishus HaRabbim. And in the center of the Rishus HaRabim, you created these partitions to make it into a Rishus HaYachid. But because it's in the center of the Rishus HaRabim, the traffic goes straight through the partitions that you made. Don't forget, the partitions could be up to 10 amas between each partition. Or according to another opinion, 13 and a third amas between each partition. That's a massive space. You could have even a car drive through that. So you have the traffic is going through. It's a candle that's dodim. So says Rabbi Yehuda, the traffic is mevatel the mechitza, and you're going to have to put these partitions on the side for the traffic not to pass through. Chachamim say, Ein tzarich. No, doesn't matter. Even if the traffic is passing through, it's still considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. So, you have to position it on the side of the Rishus HaRabim so that the traffic should go around it. Huh? People should go around it. Okay, you have to do it in such a way that there should be enough space for the traffic to be able to go around it, and then you have this area where it's enclosed for the bird. Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Elazar Damri Tarvayo. Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Elazar both said, "Kan oidiyacha koichon shel mechitzas." Here the Chacham are telling me how powerful a mechitza for Rishus HaYachid is. Once you have the mechitzas that qualify al pitayra, even if the rabbim go through it, it doesn't matter. The mechitzas remain mechitzas, and it's a Rishus HaYachid.
So they argue.
Yeah, the Chachamim argue. Kan svirele. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yechon and Rabbi Elazar said that here the Chachamim are telling us the koyach of mechitza, and they agreed to this. They're paskening like this, like the Chachamim. That once you have a mechitza, it doesn't matter if you have a big traffic, it does not take away the mechitza. Frag the Gemara, is that true? And Yerushalayim, the city of Yerushalayim, right? So the city of Yerushalayim was surrounded with walls from all sides. But it did have traffic that went through from one side to the other, and there was an opening on the one gate and a cross on the other gate, and it's traffic that went through. And what did Rabbi Yechanan say? Il malid al sesan and all is balayla, if not for the fact that you lock the doors at night, chayav nolam mishum rishus harabim, the fact that there's the traffic that goes through, the traffic goes through, it would be a rishus harabim. So what do you see over here? Because the traffic goes through, it's mevatel the mechitzas. Yerushalayim has walls around it, but it's mevatel the mechitzas. And for the Gemara, so Ella, we're going to have to say, Kan v'lo svir elech. Rabbi Yechanan is telling me what the Chachamim said, but they disagree with the Chachamim. But Rabbi Yechanan is machmeh that the traffic is mevatel the mechitzas. So the Gemara, V'rami de Rabbi Yehuda, V'rami de Rabbanan, Rabbanan. And there's a question, there's a contradiction in Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, and there's a contradiction in the Rabbanan's opinion. The Tanya, because in Abraisa we learned, and we had this quoted a few times. Yes, sir, al-Kain Omer Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said the following chiddush: Mi shoyel shnei batim mishnei tzidei Rishus HaRabim. If you have two houses on two sides of the Rishus HaRabim, oiselei lechi mikan v'lechi mikan, ekayre mikan v'kayre mikan. You put up a lechi on two sides of the house, or a kaira on two sides of the house, and v'naisa b'emtza, and you can carry going through. So what do you see over here? Rabbi Yehuda holds that even though you have just two walls from the houses on both sides, and it's a Rishus HaRabim basically, it's like a Rishus HaRabim. Everyone, the traffic goes straight through. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? It's okay, that doesn't matter, it's a good Rishus HaYachid. Amru Loi, what did the Chachamim say to him? Ein ma'arvin Rishus HaRabim bekach. This is a Rishus HaRabim, you can't make an Eiruvin Rishus HaRabim this way. Even if you're going to put up a lechi, it's not going to help you. So what's this? The Gemara says, Kashi de Rabbi Yehuda de Rabbi Yehuda, and Kashi de Rabbanan de Rabbanan. In our Mishnah, what did Rabbi Yehuda say? If the traffic goes through, it's mevatel the mechitza. Here Rabbi Yehuda is saying if the traffic goes through, it's not mevatel the mechitza. In our Mishnah, the Chachamim said if the traffic goes through, it's not mevatel. And over here, the Chachamim say the fact that you have two walls of houses on two sides is not good enough. Why? Because you have the traffic going through. So we have a stir over here in their opinions. So the Gemara answers it's not the same case. The Rabbi Yehuda loy kashye. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's not a contradiction. Why not? Hasam the ikesh shtei mechitzas ma'al yaseh. In the case of the Braisa, you have two full walls from the house on both sides. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, two walls makes a Rishus HaYachid. The Rishus HaRabim, the people that are traveling in between are not mevatel that. Here, by the boyer, you don't have two good walls. What do you have? You have the partitions in the corners. So you don't have two good walls. So therefore over here, Rabbi Yehuda holds that the Rabbim is mevatel. The contradiction in Rabbanan's opinion is not a question either. Rabbanan have an opposite svara. Here, you do have mechitzas on four sides, because each one of the partitions in the corners is a double partition that has an L, and you have partitions on each one of the four sides. and therefore, even if the Rabbin passes through, it's not mavatal. Hasam lekashem dal mechitzas. You don't have 4 mechitzas. You have 2 mechitzas. According to the Rabbanan, 2 mechitzas is nothing. You have to have at least 3 mechitzas, or maybe even 4 mechitzas, but 2 is nothing. Sagt die Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Eretz Yisrael, ein chayav aleh mishum reshus harabim. In Eretz Yisrael, you're not chayav for carrying on Shabbos for reshus harabim. So it's a very interesting Gemara here. So the Gemara is going to explain this. What is that supposed to mean? In Eretz Yisrael, there's no reshus harabim. Yosef Rav Dimi v'kamal Allah shmaite. Rav Dimi said this halacha of Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei Abai Rav Dimi. So Abai said to Rav Dimi, my time. What's the reason why in Eretz Yisrael there's no reshus harabim? Because on one side of Eretz Yisrael you have very high rocks to go up into Eretz Yisrael, and then there's a very low steep, a very low drop off of Geder. That's the name of the place. That's on another side. So basically, Eretz Yisrael the whole Eretz Yisrael is like Rosh Hashanah. Because on one side it's very high, and on the other side is very, very steep to come down. So it's surrounded by a height of 10 tvachim.
It's no base society.
Huh?
No base society.
Okay, but we're talking about Min HaTorah now. Ein chayovin aleh mishum reshus harabim. Even if it's not mukul, even if it's Yitzim base society, Min HaTorah, it's not a reshus harabim. Okay, I'm talking about Min HaTorah. It says because it has this height, and therefore the whole Eretz Yisrael is a reshus hayachid Min HaTorah. Fragt the Gemara, if that's the case, Bavel Nami, you could say the same thing regarding Bavel. Makif le pros ma'ayach gisa. It has the river of Pros on one side, v'diglas ma'ayach gisa, and has the river of Diglas on the other side. So it's also surrounded with water on both sides, and therefore has a drop off on both sides of the rivers, and therefore it's reshus hayachid. And the Gemara goes weiter. Udukula al manami. How about the entire world? Makif u'kiainis. It's surrounded with the ocean waters from every side. So you can't, if you're going to say that you're looking at these waters or the rocks that surround the area like Eretz Yisrael, so apply it to the entire world. So the whole world is the Eibish's Reshus HaYachid. So how could you be chayiv ever on Reshus HaRabim? So the Gemara says, no. So Dilma, maybe the pshat over here is Milas or Merdis Ka'amris. Within Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael is a very hilly place. Those areas in Eretz Yisrael where you have steep mountains and you come down very steeply, so over there, in those areas of Eretz Yisrael, that's what Rabbi Yochanan meant when he said that you're not chayav for Reshus harabim. He didn't mean the entire Eretz Yisrael. In areas of Eretz Yisrael where you have a flat land and you're traveling in a regular Reshus harabim, there you would be chayav. He means these areas. So he said to Rav Dimi, I think it is, right? Abai said to Rav Dimi, Karkafna, large head, which means you're a very prominent person. I saw that you were there and your head was between the pillars when Rabbi Yochanan said this halacha, and you heard that this is exactly the way Rabbi Yochanan explained this. That he wasn't referring to the whole Eretz Yisrael, he was only referring to those hilly areas in Eretz Yisrael. Manami, we learned the same thing. Ki asa Ravin, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Ravin also repeated the name of Rabbi Yochanan. V'amri la, Amar Abavo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Milas u'merdis sheberetz Yisrael. The steep areas that go up and down in Eretz Yisrael. Ein chayav aleim reshum reshus harabim. You're not chayav for like reshus harabim. She'einon kediglei midbar. Since it's not similar to the way it was in the Midbar, when he didn't have a flat land and it was easy to travel. So when you have an area which is so steep and it makes it difficult to go up and down, and it's not something that it's like a regular Reshus harabim, so you're not chayiv and not taira for this. So the Gemara weiter, Rachba asked a question from Rava. This is going back to what it said in our Mishnah. So in our Mishnah it said, Chachamim's opinion is, if you have a Reshus HaYachid that has 4 mechitzas, even if it is in such a way that the rabbin passes through, they're not mevatel the mechitzas. It remains a Reshus HaYachid. So the Gemara in connection to this brings an ibaya. So Rachba's question was, Teil ha-mislakit asara mitoich arba. You have a mountain in the middle of the Reshus HaRabim. And this mountain is steep enough that within 4 amas, it goes to a height of 10 tvachim. And that's what it should make it into a Reshus HaYachid. It gets to the height of 10 tvachim within 4 amas, it's a Reshus HaYachid. But the Rabbim boikim boy. But this is the middle of the Reshus HaRabim, and the Rabbim is passing through this, and they're going through this area. So what's the halacha? Chayav and olav Reshus HaRabim? Is this going to be a Reshus HaRabim or ain't chayav and olav? Or is it not? Are you not going to be chayav for Reshus HaRabim? So the Gemara explains according to who is it asking this Ibaya. Ali b'derabbanan la tibaya lach. According to the Rabbanan, this is not going to be a question b'chlal. Why? Hashte uma hasam denichet tashmishte. If in a case where you have the pasim in the corners and it's easy for the rabbin to pass straight through, Amri Rabbanan, still the Rabbanan say, Loi osi rabbin mevatle mechitzte. The rabbin that passed through do not mevatle the mechitzte. So hacha the loy nichet tashmishte. Here, if you have a mountain in the middle of the Rishus Rabbim and the rabbin passed through it, but it's not easy, it's steep, you have to go up and down. So in such a case, like kol sheken, for sure the Rabbana would hold that it's not mevatel the mechitza. So this area is going to become a Rishus HaYachid. It's tall enough, it's 10 tvachim high. Ki tibaya lach, our question is, I'll leave it to Rabbi Yehuda. What's going to be the halacha according What's going to be the halacha according to Rabbi Yehuda? And the Gemara explains, do I say hasam udenichet tashmishte? In the Mishnah, because people very easily pass through this area, therefore it's mevatel the mechitzas. But over here, when you have a mountain in the middle of the Rishus Rabbim, it's not easy for people to travel through. So in this case, the rabbin will not be mevatel the mechitzah. It's going to become a Rishus HaYachid. Or maybe there's no difference. Since the rabbin passed through in both cases, whether it's easy or hard to pass through, it doesn't make a difference. The fact is the traffic of the rabbin goes through here, it's mevatel the mechitza. Amalei, so Rava answered, chayavin. No, it's going to be a Rishus Rabbim. You're going to be chayavin, it's going to be a Rishus Rabbim. Because people traveling through there. Just like Rabbi Yehuda held in the Mishnah, it's mevatel the mechitza. Over here as well, it's mevatel the mechitza. Va'afilo oilun lebechevel. And he says, so much so, even if it's so steep, that in order to go up this mountain, you have to hold on to a rope, not to fall, to be able to go up. Still, it's so hard for the rabbin to travel. But the fact is, the rabbin goes there, it's mevatel the mechitza, and it's going to be a Rishus Rabbim. That's a question he was asking him. Even if they have to go up with a rope, Amalei in. So Rava says yes, even in such a case. He continued and he asked him weiter. Even in a place like Beis Meidon, which is an extremely steep area, as Rashi says, they had to go a single file line, one person at a time, to climb up very slowly to go up in this area. It's even in such a place when the rabbin passes through there, it'll become a Rishus Rabbim. Amalei in. He said yes, even in such a case, it'll become a Rishus Rabbim.
How many people have to go for
How many?
How many people have to go?
Oh, so that's a shaila. It's interesting you bringing that up. The Mefarshim Taka discussed this. This whole thing that our Mishnah and the Gemara here is talking about, when you have a Rishus HaYachid and you have a rabbin that's passing through, what's called a rabbin passing through that are mevatel the mechitza according to Rabbi Yehuda? Right? Do you have to have a rabbin of 600,000 people, like every Rishus Rabbin? Or a rabbin just means the traffic of this road. The regular traffic of this road passes through this area. There's no other place they can go because you position, that's the Pashut Pshat here. Because you positioned your partitions in the center of the road, so whatever traffic there usually is on this road, they're passing through this area. They have no other way to go. So in Beis Meidon, you're traveling in a road, and then you come to a very steep area, and that's how they have to go on a single file line, but that's how the rabbin goes, so it's mevatel the mechitza as well. Huh? It doesn't say, there's no number. Whatever the number of the rabbim is that usually goes there, and they have no other way to go other than this area, that's the rabbim that's mevatel the mechitza. Okay, so now the Gemara brings a shayla on this. Eisvei chotzer shaharabim nechnatzen lo bezu, a chotzer that you have an opening on two sides of the chotzer. Both sides of the chotzer are open to the Rishus Rabbim, and many people come in from one side, and they go v'yotzim bezu, and they go out on the other side. They pass through here. Got a shortcut through this chotzer. So what's the halacha? So this is a brayse that says benigei to tumah. So Rishus Rabbim l'tumah, legabe tumah. This is considered to be a Rishus Rabbim. Mentioned already many times that when it comes to tumah, suffik tumah in Rishus Rabbim is going to be tahir. Suffik tumah in Rishus HaYachid is tamei. So this area, because so many people are passing through, it's going to be for tumah. It's considered to be a Rishus Rabbim. Rishus HaYachid l'Shabbos, but for Shabbos it has the proper enclosure of a chotzer, and it's considered to be a Rishus HaYachid, even though the rabbin is passing through. Mani, according to who does this brayse go? If the din of this brayse follows the opinion of the Rabbanon, it can't be, because there's no chiddush here. Hashta, uma hasam denichet tashmishte. If in our Mishnah, we learned before, when it's easy for the rabbin to pass through, Amri Rabbanan layasi Rabbim mevatle mechitzta. Nevertheless, the Rabbanan say that the fact that the Rabbim are passing through does not annul the mechitzas. Here we're talking about a chotzer. We're not talking about pasei b'rois. We're talking about a chotzer, and it's not as easy to pass through like it is in the middle of a Rishus HaRabim. Like Kol Shekain, for sure it's not mevatel. Of course it's a Rishus HaYachid. What would be the chiddush? Elalav Rabbi Yehuda. So we must say that this brayse here goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. And what do you see over here? What does Rabbi Yehuda say? That when the Rabbim is passing through, it still remains a Rishus HaYachid. So we see over here, not like what Rava said. Rava said that even in a case where it's not so easy for the Rabbim to pass through, like when it's very steep, or even Beis Meira, and when you're going a single file line, because the Rabbim is passing through, it's mevatel the mechitza. But here in this Mishnah, if it goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, I see that if it's not so easy to go through, it's not mevatel the mechitza. And it says the Gemara, loy lo'olam Rabbanon, that brayse does follow the opinion of the Rabbanon. Regarding Shabbos, there's like no chiddush according to the Rabbanon. The main chiddush was benigeh to tumah. That regarding tumah, that case is called a rishus harabim. The Gemara brings another brayse: Toshema mevoyes hamufuloshois beboyres beshichenu b'mayres. You have an open mavoi, a mavoi that's open on both ends to the rishus harabim. And where is this? In boyres, shichen, and mayres. This is a Rishus HaYachid l'Shabbos. For Shabbos, this is a Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim l'Tumah. But for Tumah, it's considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. So the Gemara first clarifies Pshat in this brayse. What does it mean that you have an open mavoi in a bar? Does this mean that you have an open mavoi inside a bar? That's not possible. Ela libairis. You have an open mavoi that at the one end of the mavoi, it opens up into a bar. Okay, you probably have a picture for this if you want to see the picture. What daf are we on? Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis. Take a look in picture Kuf Pei Ches. Okay, so you have a mavoi that's open on both ends, and at one end of the mavoi there is a bar of water. The what? The what? The what? The boyer is the boyer is a regular boyer. That's a Rishus HaYachid. Yeah, that's deep. Correct. Yeah, it's deep 10 tfachim. Yeah, deep 10 tfachim and 4 tfachim wide. No, they don't go through the right. He has a picture of the person going through the boyer. Yeah. It seems like it's the end. Huh? No. It has to be a boyer that's big enough and deep enough to be a Rishus HaYachid. Otherwise, it's no point. But the mavoi is open on both ends. The mavoi itself is open on both ends, and the traffic going from one Rishus HaRabim to another Rishus HaRabim is passing through this mavoi. But at one end of the opening, there's this big Rishus HaYachid in the form of a bar. Yeah, that's the shayla here. So do you say that you have now 3 mechitzas or not? So what does it say over here? So for Tumah, it's considered to be a Rishus HaRabim because people walk through. But for Shabbos, it's considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. So again, the Gemara says the same thing. Mani, who is this brayse going according to? Ilay Rabbanan, if it goes according to the Rabbanan, Hashto ma'asam denichet hashmishte. In our Mishnah, when it's easy for people to walk through, Amri le'asi rabbim mevatli la. That's what the Rabbanan said, that we're not mevatl the mechitzes, hachad le'nichet hashmishte, because you have this boyer at the opening of a mavoi, and it's not so easy for people to pass through. Like Kol Shekain, for sure, we're going to say that it's considered to be closed, and it's a good Rishus HaYachid. Elalav Rabbi Yehuda. So it must be that this brayse here goes according to Rabbi Yehuda. And what does Rabbi Yehuda say? That because you have that boyer at the opening of the mavoi, it's considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. So we see over here that if it's not so easy for the Rabbim to pass through, so then it's a Rishus HaYachid, not like what Rava said before. And for the Gemara, Lo'olam Rabbanon, same answer as we said before. This brayse could be according to the Rabbanon as well. Or Rishus HaRabim L'Tumah Itzrichalei. The only chiddush over here is B'negeya to Rishus HaRabim of Tumah, not B'negeya to Shabbos. There's like no chiddush of Shabbos. But there's another detail that you have to explain over here, which the Mefarshim say. If you remember, we just learned before that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the moment you have 2 walls, it's automatically a good mechitza. 2 walls creates a rishus, absolute full Rishus HaYachid. So l'chayre you have 2 walls of a mavi, so it's going to be a Rishus HaYachid. So the answer that either way, it's for sure going to be a Rishus HaYachid. There's no chiddush b'chlal. Okay, so the Ritva over here says that we're talking about a mavi that's open on both ends, but even the walls on the sides are also not full walls. The walls on the side also have breaches in them. And that's what the Brais is talking about. One more case, Dr. Gemara, Tashama Shvile Beis Gilgal. The pathways in Beis Gilgal, v'chayetze and similar to Beis Gilgal, which the Gemara is going to explain in a moment. Rishus HaYachid l'Shabbos, for Shabbos it's considered to be a Rishus HaYachid, Rishus HaRabim l'Tumah, and for Tumah it's considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. Ve'zeu Shvile Beis Gilgal. What's considered to be these pathways of Beis Gilgal? Amrei de Bei Rabbi Yanai, Kol she'eina eved, Yachal litl sa'ah shel chitin, v'yaretz of Neis Radiyat. You're talking about a steep mountain that you go very high, very steep, and a person cannot take a bundle of wheat and run in front of a police that makes him run. He's giving a certain shear of a very steep area. So if it's a very steep area, so then that's going to be considered a Rishus HaYachid for Shabbos, right? It's so steep, so therefore it's going to be 10 Tvachim high within 4 Amas, so it's a very steep place. So Mani, who is this going according to? So again, we have an area which the Rabbin passes through, but it's a very steep area. Are we saying according to the Rabbanan that this is a Rishus HaYachid? That's Pashit. Rabbanan wouldn't have to say this. If in our Mishnah, when the Rabbin could easily pass through, still I say it's a Rishus HaYachid. Over here, when it's very steep, like Kol Sheken, for sure they hold it to Rishus HaYachid. Elolav Rabbi Yehuda. This Braisa must be going according to Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda is saying that because it's such a steep area and it's so hard to walk up this, therefore it's going to be Rishus HaYachid. So again, this is a question on Rava. Rava said even if you have to have such a steep area and you have to hold on to ropes, it's considered to be a Rishus HaRabim. Amalei, so Rava answers, Shvile Beis Gilgal Kamrit. You're talking about this pathway of Beis Gilgal, that's a different story. Yeshua Oyev Yisrael Hoya. Yeshua was the Oyev Yisrael. Amad v'tikkun lahem, and he was masaking for the Yidden when they came into Eretz Yisrael, drachim, ways, osratya, and open big highways, kol heicha denichat hashmishtei, and all those areas where it's easy and it's an easy pathway to go through, it's not very steep, masra l'rabim. He gave that over to the Rabbin that it belongs to the public. So people should have highways where to travel. Kol heicha denichat hashmishtei. Those areas that have pathways like the Beis Gilgal, but they're very steep and they're not easy to travel there, Masra l'Yachid. That he gave for individuals for own private property. So Rava is saying that my chiddush that I said, that when you have a very steep area and the Rabbin passed through, it remains a Rishus HaRabim, that's only if it belongs to a Rabbin. If you have a very steep area and the Rabbin passes through there, but it's a shortcut because it really is private property. Over there, I'll agree to you that in private property, it's going to be a Rishus HaYachid, because it's so hard to pass through there. So it's an interesting thing that you see from this Gemara, and Taisus discusses it, the Rishonim discuss it, but Derech Klal, when it comes to the status of Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaRabim, we don't look at ownership. How many people own it? Is it public? Is it private? None of that matters. It all matters in do you have mechitzas? Is it wide enough? Is it 16 amis? It matters on the dimensions and of the area. Over here, though, in this situation, the Gemara says that it does matter the ownership. Very interesting. You have a passageway which you can pass through in the Rishus HaRabim, but b'shas hatchak, because it's very steep, and the Rabbin goes through there. If it belongs to the public, it's going to be a Rishus HaRabim. If it belongs to a private individual, it's going to be a Rishus HaYachid.